an important player in the Arab world is Syria. So you have all these things, and of course the Israeli connection is very important. But I'm not sure exactly what the situation is in there right now, because the United States policy has appeared to be muddled. And I think it's not only in Syria, but the other Arab Spring. There's a tension between U.S. rhetoric for democracy and ensuring stability or a friendly regime. And, you know, they would like a friendlier regime than Assad, but they're scared that they're going to get a Sunni fundamentalist regime.
That was going to be my next point there.
And so,
but Majid, if I can go back to you in Los Angeles, what about that? I mean, because it's not talked a lot about in Western media because people feel uncomfortable about it for some reason. But there is a radical Sunni element being played out in Syria right now. It's been there for a while, and Assad has been really oppressive over the last few decades. Now they're back.
Yeah, that's. I mean, that's true. But let me just go back to the point your other guest made. I think the thing is that about United States. I don't know, whatever United States does, it's criticized. If it intervenes in Syria and it's overthrow the regime and let's say establish a democratic government in Syria, they would say that it's intervened unilaterally. If it doesn't, they would say United States is not reacting. I think United States has really done the appropriate steps to condemn Assad regime. It was one of the first countries to condemn Assad regime use of brutal use of violence, and I think it was one of the countries who pushed for the sanctions on Syria. So I don't know what else
gentlemen, let me jump in here. We've run out of time. We're going to go to a short break, and after that short break, we'll continue our discussion on what awaits Syria. Stay with RT. Welcome back to Crosstalk. I'm Peter Lavelle. To remind you, we're talking about the situation in Syria. Okay, Majid, if I can go to you in Los Angeles, do you think there should be a outside intervention, military intervention into Syria at this point? Okay, that includes a no-fly zone, certain corridors for humanitarian aid, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think it's time to do that? Do you support it?
Well, I think, first of all, let me explain that the international community, international organizations, the Arab League, and non-Arab countries such as Turkey had used every step possible, every means possible to convince Assad to stop the violence and use dialogue or civilized political manner to address the grievances of the people. And none of these approaches worked. I mean, he decided to use the security forces and military to address the crisis in Syria. And the military or Syrian regime have been for 4 decades shaped by this belief that every problem can be addressed by military. So I think he will not change his approach. And the speech last time that he came out and is saying that he's not responsible for the people being killed, and he showed complete obliviousness of what going inside Syria. I think he insists on using the same approach, and I think now we probably. There is, to protect the civilian, protect the killing. We have daily basis killing in Syria, torturing children. We saw Hamza Khatib that they're
but also,
mutilated.
let's be fair too. I mean, we see what's claimed to be defections from the military going into the opposition, and they're using force as well. Okay, I know I keep pressing on the issue of civil war, but that's the definition of a civil war when this country, people of the same nationality in the same country take up arms against each other, and they are being armed from the outside. There is evidence of that as well.
Well, I agree, but who started that? It was the regime who initiated that. If the regime has from the beginning with a very civilized political used a very civilized political approach, I think that would not have led to the situation that we see now. But I emphasize that both sides should use really constraint. And back to the previous question, I think to protect the civilian inside Syria, Syria, and I mean, my family friends, I mean, they're living there, and they're regularly reporting that about the violence that is going on there, the risk that they are facing. I think to protect these civilians, there have to be some sort of international intervention. Either it could be no-fly zone, or it could be equipping and training
let's point out
oppositional groups.
Let me point out to my viewers that NATO's intervention into Libya killed lots of civilians. So that's what you get when you get outside intervention. Ivan, if I can go back to you in Washington, I mean, is this whole thing, it's not about Assad, it's not about democracy, it's not about any of these things. It's all about Iran and breaking the bridge that Iran has through Syria to Hezbollah, and you could even throw in, if you want, Hamas in Gaza. It's all geopolitical. It has nothing really to do with the interests of the Syrian people.
Well, I think that's true. The United States policy is usually rhetorically to support democracy, but usually is driven by interests, and the interests in this case may conflict. And I think that's why we're getting a little bit of a muddled policy. On the one hand, Israel at first was not thrilled about the overthrow of Assad because they didn't know what they were going to get, and neither, what comes after that, and neither did the United States. The second thing is, yes, they're trying to break the bridge between Syria and Iran. Of course, and one way to do that would be to get rid of Assad, but of course, you don't know what the new government of Syria would do either. So that's a important question. The real question, from my perspective, I deal with U.S. policy. Should the U.S. be meddling around in there? No. And if they are giving aid to some groups, armed groups in Syria, which I don't think has been demonstrated, if they are, they should stop it. And I think there are long-term consequences for meddling in the internal affairs of countries that are not in the U.S. strategic interest to do so. The United States has no strategic interest in Syria. Its ally Israel does, but Israel lives there, the United States doesn't. And I think the United States really needs to decouple itself from Israel more than it does. And therefore, I don't think the United States should be involved with no-fly zones or anything like that, or helping the rebels, such as they did blatantly in Libya. It's just, in the long term, the system, when you go in and try to protect minorities that are revolting, no matter what, and I do believe there are democratic elements in Syria that are trying to overthrow the government. There may be other elements in there too, as there were in Egypt's case. But I think even if there are democratic elements that are trying to overthrow Assad, when the United States supports any internal revolt, it only encourages other groups to try to get to internationalize the conflict, as the Libyans were able to do, and it also, which undermines the international system of sovereignty. And that system is not perfect, because sometimes internal revolts are quelled. But the reason that we have that imperfect system, it's very realistic. It reduces the amount of wars, and when you trample on that system for one particular country, it may bring short-term gains, maybe democracy in Syria, but maybe not. But on the long term, it certainly erodes the international system of not messing around internally in other people's business.
Majid in Los Angeles, would you be prepared to see a Libyan-like operation for enacted against Syria? I mean, would it be worth it?
Well, I think, we can't have exactly that scenario. I mean, we can use different other approaches which are more effective. But there are the countries in the region, the Arab countries, the non-Arab country, Turkey, who are tired of talking with Assad and trying to convince him to stop the violence, and he doesn't want to follow that. I think you can use these let's say, coalition of the Arab countries and Turkey to some sort of either back the oppositional group in Syria, Syrian National Council, and to train them, and then or to impose, let's say, no-fly zone. So we don't have to have a Western country like Western countries or NATO countries involved in this. It could be resolved by regional actors, and I don't know why we should have to apply exactly what happened in Libya to Syrian case. We can take different approaches in that regard.
Yeah, if I go back to you in Washington, I mean, when a country like the United States and France and Britain, or just NATO in general says this leader has to go, doesn't that sit into